Welcome in, everyone, to a new episode of the Batfoot Podcast. My name is Damon, here with my co-hosts David and Matt. Got a big episode today. We've had a couple big free agents signing. We've had a couple trades and a lot more of the under-the-radar moves that we'll get to. But before we get to all of that, Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Just been hanging out and watching some sports. There's not a ton on right now. The NFL's been going on. It's been pretty crazy. I don't know if y'all saw that game yesterday between the Patriots and the Raiders, but I almost died laughing. Or I guess that was Sunday, but I almost died laughing at that. That was hilarious. Especially Mac Jones getting stiff-armed into the ground. As an Auburn fan, that made me really happy.
It was pretty funny. But David, how are you doing?
The Cubs made a move, man. I'm doing great.
Oh, listen. All right, Jesus Christ. Let's other than the Cubs making a move, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, it's almost Christmas, so happy holidays to everybody. And yeah, I mean, enjoy your holiday, enjoy your vacations as they come. I think I'm going on vacation next week, so should be a good little holiday season.
Well, that's pretty good to hear.
How you doing, Damien?
We've had better weeks. We've had some better weeks. But overall, we're doing all right. The Dodgers are continuing on with the 2015 greatest offseason ever, which we'll talk about here. But let's go ahead and start with some smaller moves that we had happen, and we'll go ahead and start with the kind of, I guess, relief pitcher, starting pitcher market, whatever you want to say, with Lorenzen. But the Tigers signed Michael Lorenzen to a 1 year deal for $8.5 million.
Yeah, so obviously I think for $8.5 million, they're probably thinking he's more of a starter. And last year he was not bad as a starter. Michael Lorenzen put up in 97 innings. Now they were all in starts, 18 starts. I guess he battled some injury a little bit. Didn't pitch real deep into games, but he put up a 4.24 ERA. The metrics say he was about a 4.24 ERA pitcher. Good ground ball rate, 50%. Not a ton of strikeouts. Walks are a little high with him, but as he gets the ball on the ground, doesn't give up a ton of home runs. He's more of a soft contact guy. He's kind of a number 5 starter, and I guess if you're the Tigers, just filling out a little bit of depth on guys that maybe you can flip at the deadline could be a good thing to have. You need pitching, and he was there. So it's going to be difficult to find guys that want to sign with the Tigers this year. And, Michael Lorenzen's a guy that'll give him the opportunity to start. So I think, it was kind of a good fit for him. And maybe he gets flipped. Maybe he has a good season and goes to a contender at the deadline. We'll see. But definitely 1 year, $8.5 million. I don't know if I would have paid that, but it's the Tigers, and they probably got plenty of payroll and not much room to improve their team this year. So it's probably worth the risk and just 1 year deal on a guy.
Yeah, it gives them a potential option to flip at the deadline, for sure. But David, we'll go ahead and look over to you for the Oakland A's signing Trevor May for a 1 year, $7 million deal.
Yeah, I clamored for this one. I really love Trevor May. He's got a YouTube channel, and I highly recommend you check it out. He outlines a lot of stuff he does, off-season training, and the kind of things he looks for as a pitcher, and his game preparations and stuff. It's really enlightening. And I have always wished him the best. Always hoped he would end up on the Cubs. Goes to the A's for $7 million, which is a really good deal for what is essentially a middle reliever. And Trevor May throws a high 90s fastball. He throws a changeup, a slider, curveball. He's almost got a starter mix because he used to start. So this is a guy who can absolutely be flipped at the deadline to a contender. He's going to be probably the closer in Oakland. I would imagine he's going to get some opportunity to close games, and that may have been one of the things that drew him to Oakland. But good follow on Twitter, good follow on YouTube. Check him out, and I'm hoping the best for him. I think this is a really good move for Oakland.
Yeah, if I can hop in real quick on him briefly, I think this is one of the under the radar moves. It's going to pan out really, really well. His stuff is really good, and he's dealt with some injuries and some different things the last couple of years, but I think he's going to work out well for Oakland.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be a really good deal for Oakland too. I don't know how many games he's actually going to be able to close out with that team, but he'll be a good reliever, at least, that he could potentially get flipped. But we had the Braves made another signing this week, Matt. So they signed Jordan Luplow to a 1-year, $1.4 million deal.
Yeah, Jordan Luplow is kind of interesting. The Braves are a mess in left field / DH roles, and obviously, like, they need whatever they can get there. And Jordan Luplow is a guy who, he's had some decent success at times. In 2019, he actually put up 2.6 WAR in only 85 games. Had a really good season. He has run really low batted ball metrics throughout his career. Like, his career high BABIP outside of that one decent season was a 241 in 2017. So, just he's a platoon outfielder. He hits lefties pretty well. You could probably platoon him with Rosario out there. I think the Braves probably are still thinking about making a bigger signing in left field, and this gives them some insurance and depth if they decide to do that. And if not, it's a pretty good platoon option to have. And he's also a decent defender out there. So, you've got Sam Hilliard as well. That'll probably be more of the defensive replacement type guy. But, if you can probably feel more comfortable with Luplow out there in left field than Rosario. He also has a really, really good arm, so he could probably spell Ronald Acuna in right field if you need him to. With Ronald Acuna having some injury issues the last couple of years, maybe DHing him just a little bit to save his knees and put Luplow out there. So I think this is a pretty good signing. It's a 1-year, $1 million deal, $1.4 million deal. So there's no risk to it anyways. So.
Yeah, very low risk and gives him a guy who can hit lefties really, really well. For that lineup, and with all those other left-handed options that they're dealing with in left field. But we had the Royals make a couple moves, so I'll just say them both, and then you guys each hit one of them. But the Royals signed 2 pitchers this week, one being Ryan Yarborough on a 1-year, $3 million deal, and then signing Jordan Lyles to a 2-year, $17 million deal.
I'll jump on Jordan Lyles, and I would say this is the price for starting pitching reliable starting pitching here in 2022. Jordan Lyles does not have any specific skills beyond being able to throw innings without getting hurt. His last 2 years, he's had 180 innings both years, and his ERA combined is like 4.9, which is exactly what he's projected for this year. He's going to give up runs. He's not going to be dominant. He's going to get some ground balls. He's going to get hit around a little bit, but he will go deep into the game and, at least give the team a chance to win. He's been on Texas. He's been on Baltimore. Now he goes to the Royals. He's just kind of eating innings for these bottom feeder teams, and he's making a living out of it. I mean, this dude is getting paid $17 million to go out there every 5 days and throw 6 innings, however many runs, be damned. He's just going to go out there and throw. So, there's something to be said for this kind of skill, and it's very clear that MLB teams value that. And we've heard some interviews this week, and guys are talking about how valuable innings are, especially with the 13 reliever rule, where you can only have 13 relievers on your team at any time, and your options are limited as well. So I think innings are extremely valuable right now, and the Royals could look to shift him to another team at the deadline potentially as well, because teams are going to be needing innings. Guys are going to get hurt. We're going to see a lot of more of this type of thing where you're going to have pitchers be able to take on that burden of throwing into the 6th inning, even if they're getting beat around.
Yeah. I can elaborate on Yarborough just a little bit. It's a very cheap deal, 1 year, $3 million. He's a fine swing man. I mean, he'll probably start for them because they don't have a lot of pitching depth, but he can go into the back of a rotation. And he doesn't throw hard at all, but he's got some little bit of funk to him. And, he might work out well in that ballpark because it's a pretty good pitcher's park, and home run balls have been the problem for him for most of his career. These past 2 years, a 1.45 home run per 9, 1.35 home run per 9. It's kind of bit him. He's a really good control pitcher. So he might put up an okay season there. And I mean, it's a cheap deal for a team that needs innings. So,
and
go ahead,
David. I was gonna say there's also still some interest there with potentially bringing back Zach Greinke even after both of these deals for for the Royals just to get another veteran in there that can kind of give him some innings. But David, go ahead and say what you were going to say.
Oh yeah, and it's good to get, guys in there in front of like Bobby Witt Jr., right? You want to have those veteran guys in the clubhouse with Brady Singer.
Yeah.
With all those guys, as many veterans as you can bring in, because those guys are going to help develop Brady Singer. They're going to help develop Jackson Kowar and Bobby Witt and all those guys. They've got Salvador Perez there helping with MJ Melendez, but what you're kind of seeing with the Royals here is acquire veterans, some skill, whether that's just throwing innings or what, and then see what happens, down the road, and probably trade them. And, you just need Bobby Witt to develop. You need Vinny Pasquantino to develop. So,
yeah, they really do. So we'll go ahead and stay in division there, and we'll go over to the Cleveland Guardians, who they made a couple moves this week as well, signing catcher Mike Zunino to a 1-year, $6 million deal, and then trading infielder Owen Miller to the Brewers for a player to be named later.
Yeah, I can start with Zunino. He's a guy who he is a great defensive catcher who is a weird hitter. He strikes out an absolute ton, and he does not get hits when he puts the ball in play, but he hits a lot of balls over the fence. So he's a very weird player, but he's pretty good. I mean, in 2021, put up 4.5 wins above replacement. I mean, so I don't think he's some kind of superstar catcher. His career low strikeout rate was 34%, which is astronomically high. And the one thing in 2021 he did do was he did start walking a little bit, and instead of putting up like 260 on base percentages, he put up a 9% walk rate. So he put up more of like a 300 on base percentage, which is a little bit closer to league average. But this is a guy who, he's going to hit around the Mendoza line, but he's going to hit for some power, and he's going to be a really good defender. So he's probably more of, he's probably more of like a 2 to 3 win player rather than like a 5 win player. But every now and then he's had that season in him where he just has a great year at the plate. So you might see that from him in Cleveland. It'll be interesting for sure. They definitely did some power in that lineup, and they're going to get it from him.
David, you got anything on Owen Miller?
I do. I was looking at it, and so I don't remember if you guys remember, but Owen Miller in April last year hit like 400.
Yeah, I remember.
So he went very, very nuts, earned himself a lot more playing time, and down the stretch he was not as good. With that increased playing time, he could play second base poorly, first base pretty well. This is kind of a post prospect type of guy. I think the Guardians knew they were going to get a roster crunch here at some point in the offseason. They've already added a first baseman in Josh Bell. Zunino is probably going to spend a little time at first base with Naylor at catcher. So I just think they'll probably have, they had no space for him, and a player to be named later is pretty irrelevant. The Brewers obviously wanted somebody to compete at second base, I think, with Toro. Who was the other guy they got for second base? Because they traded Colton Wong. It was
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I'm gonna look.
I know they have Luis Urias still, but I think
right. He might be third.
No, he might be playing second with
currently depth charts has Bryce Terang in at second base. No. So yeah, I don't. They're gonna have some competition. That Keston Hira could play some second base too. They're gonna have competition at second base, and I think they're just looking for a little upside anywhere they can find it. Obviously, Owen Miller has that capability to be a decent hitter, but
might be Vaughn Grissom.
The Braves
trade for Adames.
The Braves just going to keep giving the Brewers good players. I don't.
Braves trading for Adames.
I don't think they're trading for Adames.
But... I don't either. I just a joke.
Oh yeah.
Alrighty. Since you guys are done with that little squabble,
let's talk about the next player that Damien's going to hate now.
Damien's favorite team.
No. Let's go ahead and we won't talk really about him.
Just your favorite team.
But that's with the San Francisco Giants. They did sign a former Dodger in Ross Stripling to a 2-year, $25 million deal with an opt out there. The big signing that we were hinting at is they agreed to terms, I believe it was last Tuesday, with Carlos Correa on a 13-year, $350 million deal. But actually today he was supposed to be announced and the thing got postponed, the press conference, and there's been some hiccup in his physical. As a notorious Scott Boras client, Scott Boras doesn't like hiccups and physicals really, so we won't go in depth on the Correa deal until we actually get official confirmation, because there is a small likelihood that he can go back to the open market.
Yeah, so it's pretty crazy with the Correa. I don't know, I guess we'll wait till next week to really talk about him, but Ross Stripling's interesting.
Yeah, he is.
2 years, $25 million.
Yeah.
Not a bad contract for a guy who just put up a 3.01 ERA in 134 innings, 24 starts. He pitched in 32 games, so he wasn't a full-time starter. I think he's a guy who can be a full-time starter. He's never done it before, but he starts a lot of games. So, but he was really good in Toronto last year, 3.11 FIP. So that 3.01 ERA really wasn't too much of a fluke. I don't think he'll put up that again, but man, the Giants do this every year. We've talked about it how many times this year already about these pitchers they sign. I mean, they're doing it again. I mean, look at what they did with Alex Cobb last year. I mean, think about, Ross Stripling doing the same types of things. I mean, they're going to do it again, and this might be the next guy that they do it with. So,
yeah, Ross Stripling has a connection to that front office as well. And Farhan Zaidi came from the Dodgers. Gabe Kapler. Yep. Yeah, Gabe Kapler was a minor league development guy when Ross Stripling was coming through that Dodgers pipeline there. And then another interesting thing, which I know it's just a little tidbit here, but Ross Stripling's first career start came in San Francisco, and he had 7 2/3 no-hit innings in San Francisco.
Yeah, and you look at the Giants' rotation right now. It doesn't really it's worrisome because it's in the division it is in with the Dodgers offense and the Padres offense. But as a whole, Ross Stripling slots in at the 4 per FanGraphs depth charts, which is really good. That's a really good 4, because I think Stripling could probably be a 3 on most teams. He's got a lot of skill, and he's just never been able to kind of stick in the rotation for a long time. So, I think it's that flexibility, right? It's his ability to swing from the bullpen that teams like, and they want him to be able to do that to preserve his arm and to allow for other starts to be made. So, I don't know. Maybe $12 million. I think the Giants do want him to start this season, but that I think that was 134 innings his most in his career. Yeah, it was. Max. Yeah, that was the most he's ever thrown. So, you would think that he would be pushing it if he got to like 150 innings, but we'll see.
Yeah, he probably wanted a runway to start, and the Giants were going to be the team that gave it to him. Having that background with him before. But let's go ahead and we'll stay in division there, and we'll go to the rivals of the Giants, my favorite team, the Los Angeles Dodgers. They made 3 moves this week, and continuing on with that 2015 kind of offseason vibe of signing Noah Syndergaard to a 1-year, $13 million deal, signing JD Martinez to a 1-year, $10 million deal, and then they swung a trade with the Tampa Bay Rays to acquire relief pitcher JP Feyereisen for relief pitcher Jeff Bagel.
Yeah, I guess I can start with Feyereisen. He got traded in 2021. I believe he was part of the
Adames trade.
Yep, and Rasmussen.
Yep, and Rasmussen. So he came into he went into Tampa Bay, and they found something with him. In 2022, he dealt with injuries down the stretch with shoulder injury, but he had in 24 innings had a 0 ERA, which I think is pretty good.
Decent.
It's decent. Yeah, he had a 167 FIP, so it wasn't totally fluky. I mean, you would expect him to probably have given up a few home runs, but in a larger sample size. But his plate discipline numbers are really good. Projection systems don't love him, but with the Dodgers' track record of relievers and being able to turn guys who have some good traits, but aren't necessarily well put together relievers yet into well put together relievers, I would expect that JP Fireheisen does really, really well in Los Angeles.
You stole my guy there. I was going to talk about him first too.
Mhm.
I really like JP
Yeah.
Fireeisen, and he was good in Milwaukee too. Was nasty for a couple of months there in 2021
Yeah.
before he got moved. This is a typical Dodgers move. They've hit just an absolute home run with this. He's a dominant reliever that hasn't quite been, observed by everybody in the league yet. So
Yeah.
I really think he's going to be good.
Yeah.
It is to be noted too that he probably isn't going to be back until August.
Yeah,
the injury
still
is the
injured,
question
yeah.
mark. So
Yeah.
And then the return was a low minors reliever with lots of strikeouts and lots of walks. So I don't really think it's. I mean, you never know with a guy like that, but I don't think it's going to end up being too much.
it's the Rays. They'll get something out of him.
We'll
Yeah,
see.
probably
Maybe.
a lefty reliever. He's 6'5", throws really downhill, has a cut to his fastball, but like Matt mentioned, doesn't have a lot of command that way. So if he's able to rein in the command a little bit with a team like the Rays, he'll probably be a decent bullpen arm there. But transitioning over to Noah Syndergaard, I'll let you guys talk a little bit more about it. But just listening to his press conference or whatever he had with the media yesterday, he seems like he is very excited, and he's already working with Driveline and Tread Athletics to try and gain some flexibility and some mobility back to gain his 100, trying to get back up to 100 miles an hour. Because the guy we saw this year was not the Noah Syndergaard of old.
Yeah, Noah Syndergaard wasn't very good in 2022. He was okay, but I mean, he just wasn't the same guy. I mean, this is a guy who, before his injuries, was a perennial All-Star candidate and a couple times Cy Young candidate, and he lost 3 miles an hour off his fastball after the injuries, and just, I mean, he went from having a 9 to 10 strikeout per nine rate to a 6.3 strikeout per nine rate last year. The control is still there, and he's getting the ball on the ground a good bit still, but it's just not the same guy. But you might see the Dodgers be able to, work with him and maybe a year removed from his injuries, maybe get, like you say, go to the drive line, get some of that velocity back, figure things out a little bit. And it's a low risk deal. I mean, one for 13 is not that bad. I mean, especially for the Dodgers. I know it sounds like the Dodgers might be trying to avoid the tax in some ways this year. Maybe they're trying to reset their tax years. So,
yes,
1 for 13 is, I mean, if you're trying to avoid the tax and you're close to it, that's not the best. But for a guy who's not really, you don't really know what you're going to get out of him. But I mean, it's not a bad deal on its own. So.
I think we've seen Noah Syndergaard's floor is the one thing. I think this season
Maybe.
was exactly what you expect the worst case scenario for a Noah Syndergaard season going forward. It's not like he's going to tax his arm throwing 94, right? Like, he can easily make a living as a soft toss and ground ball guy here. And I think there's definitely some changes to his pitch mix that could definitely help him be that kind of pitcher. But if he's going to work on getting velocity back and getting strikeouts back, I think that's major news. And it's the kind of thing that, he's only 30 years old. There's plenty of mileage left on his arm. I imagine he'll come out certainly looking different this year than he did last year. And, he's a skilled pitcher. We've seen it before. So, I have the utmost faith in the Dodgers system because they are always good at nailing guys like this as well.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that he mentioned was he's like he wanted to come to LA because he had bigger offers for longer years other places. And he said he came to LA because everything they touch turns to gold. And he said he specifically saw what they did with Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney last year, and he wanted to be a part of that. So this is a typical Dodgers move. And I mean, when we're looking at the market where Mike Clevenger got $12 million, I think I would take Noah Syndergaard at $13 million, or Matt Boyd got $10 million. I take Noah Syndergaard at $13 million.
Compared to those, there's no doubt.
It's just the way the market's looking. This is kind of the point. I mean, even if you're talking about Ross Stripling got $12 million, love Ross Stripling, but if you could take the upside of what Noah Syndergaard can be for 13, you kind of go for that.
And with the floor of what he was last year too.
I mean, I really don't think that's the floor for him. And I don't know what the upside is. I think that a lot of that upside depends on just how how much you think how much can he actually improve his velocity back. But I mean, his floor from last year, like the projections have him at like a 4.7 ERA this year. I mean, I would say, I'm not gonna sit here and say that the projections are always right, whatever. But I mean, you talk about floor. I mean,
that's a strange projection given that he's literally never had any ERA lower than a 4.28 in a
right.
full
But I mean,
season.
but he's
So
also never thrown
mm,
a he's also never thrown 94 over an extended period of time. And I
yeah,
mean, last year he had his expected ERA was a 4.43 and he ended up with a 3.94 ERA. So like it's not,
mm,
I mean, I don't think his floor is a sub 4 ERA.
Yeah,
I
but
mean, floor wise, he could be a guy that gets blown up next year, but it
just
just
I mean,
remember
depends.
he did
he
that in
still had a
front of the
three
Phillies defense though.
and
Well,
Angels. Yeah,
Yeah,
Angels.
and he
I mean,
still
yeah,
had a
I mean, I'm not,
383
yeah.
FIP. Like I think that's
Yeah.
very easily you could say that that's
Yeah,
his
well,
floor.
he had a
Yeah.
low home run per fly ball rate, but either way, I mean, I don't think he's going to be much worse than he was last year. If he's
Yeah.
worse, I mean, I don't think he's going to be much worse. I'm not saying that he's going to put up a 5 ERA. I'm just saying like I think it could be worse than last year, but it could be better. I mean, like I said, he could go to drive line I mean, I don't think he'll ever throw 100 again, but he might average 95 on his 95 and a half, 96 on his
Yeah.
fastball
I mean,
after next year,
I mean, he was even showing stuff that he was throwing 98 in bullpens
Yeah.
early last year. So, I mean, I don't think that 100 miles an hour touching it is out of the thing. But, I mean, if you can get to 97, 98 for no center guard,
Yeah.
that'll be just fine.
Yeah.
But, anyway, staying with them, we'll do the last move. And that was with the Dodgers signing JD Martinez for 1 year, $10 million deal. And it's interesting because his agent, Scott Boras, came out today and pretty much said that he turned down $6 and $7 million more from other places to reunite with Mookie Betts, Robert Van Scoyoc in LA, and also kind of rebuild his value a little bit.
I was just gonna say this is a steal, man. I was big on JD Martinez as the number one DH in this class. He's a really good bat that I think was getting hampered a little bit by Boston. His numbers in Boston were worse than they were on the road last year. So, I think some of that contract pressure, coupled with the monster where he's not athletic enough to be able to turn doubles when he hits the ball into the left center field gap in Boston. So he's getting held to singles. It's dropping his slugging. He's not able to get the ball up and over the wall as much at this point. His home run total went down. I think a move to, Dodger Stadium where the wall is low, same size all around, gaps are wide. He's going to feast, I think. And it won't be necessarily a return to form, but, he was definitely going to go elsewhere. And, he did. He took a steal of a deal to go back to LA.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree completely with him being. He's a good. He's got a chance to still be really good, but he really did start to drop with his power numbers last year, and his BABIP was still high. While he ran at the lowest on base percentage he's run since 2013 last year, while still having a high BABIP. His walk rates have dropped. His strikeout rate's gone up. He still put up a 120 WRC plus, which is good. But, when you factor in that he's, a DH, I mean, $10 million is fine for him. I don't think it's like some kind of earth shattering move or anything. I think he'll do fine in LA for a year. I mean, I don't think it's a bad contract or anything. Just, I don't think it's really an earth shattering move. And I mean, I guess he could find the power stroke again. But I mean, he only hit 16 home runs and 600 plate appearances this past year. That's not very JD Martinez-esque, but we'll see what happens. It could end up being a good signing. I just think it's going to be kind of like he's a fine player type signing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a interesting move, at least for the Dodgers, because it's going to be the first time that they've ever actually locked down the designated hitter spot full time.
Mm-hmm.
They've usually used it as a way to give guys a day off. I know we saw Justin Turner did that a lot this last year, but we'll talk a little bit more about him here in just a little bit with his move. But it's interesting there. But I think the big move is getting him back with his hitting guru, Robert Van Scoyoc. I mean, he's the guy who turned JD Martinez's career around. When he got released by Houston and went to Detroit, what was that, in 2013 to 2014? Robert Van Scoyoc was the big reason why JD turned it around. So I think getting him back to every day working with Van Scoyoc, It's going to be a big move. I'm not saying that his power is going to come back, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him still hit upwards of 20 homers, and still be that just consistent overall bat that he can be.
I pulled up JD Martinez's spray chart this year just to see if there was a bunch of singles to left center field, and there's a bunch of singles to left center field. I'm telling you, man, that getting him away from the monster is going to help his line by a ton.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, because they're going to need it with the San Diego Padres also making some more moves here in this division. They made a couple moves. They signed Seth Lugo to a 2-year, $15+ million deal, which has an opt out after the first season, and then they also signed Matt Carpenter today to a $6.5 million deal in 2023. Has a player option and a bunch of incentives that could end up taking the overall deal to a 2-year, $21 million deal.
With Seth Lugo, and correct me if I'm wrong, but did I see where he said he wanted to start?
Yes, it was between the Dodgers and the Padres there, and he really does want to start overall, and that's why he leaned towards the Padres, because they don't technically have a fifth guy in their rotation at the moment.
Yeah, so with Seth Lugo, that's interesting, because he was a starter back in 2017, and he was okay as a starter. The ERA was high, but the metrics were not too bad. But since, and in 2018 he pitched over 100 innings, even though he was a reliever. But since then he's really been maybe a 2-inning guy at times, but his last 2 years he's definitely been a 1-inning guy. And he's all right. He's pitched to a 3.5 ERA or so, but he's got a really good curveball. The spin rates are really good on it. But that's weird that I don't know the track record of guys who have been relievers for. It's been from 2018 to 2022. He started 12 games and he's pitched in like 200 games, so 250 games. So I don't know what the track record of is of a guy who has been a reliever almost exclusively for 5 years and then becomes a starter again. I would assume he ends up back in the bullpen, in other words, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the Padres. Sorry, Dave, I was going to cut you off there. The Padres. The thing about it is they have him and Nick Martinez that both fill that swing man to starter role in general. So you could easily see them working both of those guys into the rotation. And then if it comes into the playoffs, I'm pretty sure you'll see Lugo go into that late inning role with Suarez and Hader come the postseason time.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. You have that swingman, role. They're kind of capitalizing the market there. Also, Seth Lugo's chase rate was first percentile. I do wonder if the Padres or somebody can't figure out a way to tunnel Seth Lugo's nasty curveball better with his pitches, so that he actually is able to, get those results out of that elite spin. Because it seems like he relies on suppressing contact versus being able to get whiffs with that giant curveball.
Yeah.
So the Padres' other move they made was signing Matt Carpenter. I know we went over that stuff already, but it's an interesting move here, because it seems like they have. He'll probably be a DH / bench bat, but it seemed like they have all of his positions kind of really covered, full of players already.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a DH / bench type thing. He was good for those month and a half in New York this year, but other than that, his track record's been really poor since 2018. So I don't know how much they buy into whether or not that 5-week stretch, 6-week stretch was
154
for real,
plate appearances.
154 plate appearances. I don't know if they buy into that being for real, or if they buy into the last ever since 2018 being his real talent level. But it's probably somewhere. I don't think he's as bad as he was in 2021, but I think he's definitely not as good as he was in 2022. So I think he'll probably be something like he was in 2019, where he had a 96 WRC plus, played decent in the field, low average, pretty good on base, hit some home runs, not great slugging, but decent. He'll hit right-handed pitching fairly well. I think he's kind of more of a depth move, and his contract kind of shows that $6.5 million this year. I know the deal can max it more than that, but I don't think they're paying him a whole lot of money. So, I think he'll be. And now you got the injury question too. Is he going to be healthy? Last year he could stay healthy, so we'll see what happens with him. But I mean, I think this is just kind of a fine signing.
He's just a different hitter now. Like that's
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. Is he made some significant changes to get to the numbers he got to last year, and they were really, really good. I mean, he was, it was only 154 plate appearances, but it was such a stark difference from his St. Louis days that I buy into the changes, but I don't buy into him being able to replicate it to that level. So, he's 37. We've seen guys beat the aging curve at 37 before. I don't know that I disagree that, he'll be less good, but it's a flyer, and the Padres have room on their roster to take on bench players. They've kind of voided themselves of those Will Myers and Jurickson Profar type of guys who are they're good, not great. Matt Carpenter could very well throw up these numbers again, right? But that's low probability. But at the very least, he'll play well against righties. He can play first base, maybe jobble at third base, play DH. It'll be fine. It's a fine bench signing for the Padres for a pretty cheap contract, and since when are they worried about money anyway? So,
yeah, I do find it interesting that he got a 2-year deal with a player option, or an opt out, whatever, like however you want to describe it, it's the same thing. But it is interesting that they gave him the player option for the second year, not a team option. I guess that's to guarantee they got him. But after having such a small sample size in the year before and not really knowing, it is kind of interesting at that point. But let's go ahead and stay in the NL West as well. We'll talk about a little minor trade that the Pirates and Rockies made. That's with the Pirates acquiring outfielder / DH Connor Joe, and the Rockies acquiring prospect Nick Garcia.
Yeah, I know, Damien. I know you love Connor Joe, or at least you did. I think he's a interesting bat. He's a good on base guy. He's put up good walk rates, and he doesn't strike out a ton. And you would think that if you have those good plate discipline numbers, being in Coors would probably make you have a really good slash line, but he just hasn't really had that in 2022. And 467 plate appearances, only put up an 87 WRC plus. He did put up a 340 on base percentage, but a 238 average. The batting average on balls in play was pretty low for Coors, at 296. 2021, he was good at the plate in only 211 plate appearances, put up a 115 WRC plus. He's not much of an outfielder. He plays out there, but he's not very good there. He's probably more of a DH. He's kind of an interesting type that has some form of major league track record, that Pittsburgh could take a chance on and maybe figure something out with him. He's got good plate discipline numbers, and maybe they could do a buy low and end up getting something there. So it's an interesting trade from their side.
Yeah, I really like Connor Joe. Like you mentioned, he's not a guy who's going to hit for a ton of power. The 8 home runs, 7 home runs in his 2 full-time major league seasons. But if you look at his overall numbers this year, they're unimpressive, right? A 238 average, a 338 on base is pretty all right, an 87 WRC plus, not that great. But if you look at his walk rate to his strikeout rate, he was still walking 12% of the time. The strikeout rate, 21%, that's fine. You can get away with that. The real big key here comes from looking at his month-by-month statistics. So March and April, he was 272 average. May was a 271 average. June was a 287 average. And then he got injured. And from July on, in his limited plate appearances, he batted 162, 146, and 167. After the injury and limited playing time. Mm-hmm. So he's a guy who was hitting 270 and above with those walkout rates, or that walk rate to strikeout rate. That's just fine for you. Not hit for a ton of power, but he's a good, solid ball player. Get on base, steal you a couple bases, and just be an overall pretty solid player. And then he got injured, lost playing time, and wasn't able to ever really recover from that. I think it's a really good move for the Pirates. It's a kind of a buy low thing. He's like I said, mentioned, a solid guy who can get in that lineup every day. He kind of knows how to hit. He knows how to just get on base. It's a overall solid type player for the Pirates. It's kind of a guy they need.
Yeah. I mean, Connor Joe's approach is what I really like about him too. He's got that fantastic eye at the plate, makes contact. the kind of hitter that's kind of lost in today's game while still being able to be above average at hitting for exit velocity. So,
yeah, it's really interesting. And then the Pirates also signed catcher Austin Hedges to a 1-year, $7 million deal.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matt, you take it.
Yeah, I was going to say Austin Hedges is a guy who, remember earlier we were talking about Mike Zunino and how he was a great defensive catcher who has a horrible strikeout rate and doesn't really walk all that much, but he hits lots of home runs. Well, Austin Hedges is that without the home runs. I mean, he's he's just a really good defensive catcher. He put up in 2019 in 102 games, he put up a 27.6 defensive value on Fangraphs, which is insane. I mean, he's one of the best defensive catchers in baseball. Problem is, he's atrocious at the plate.
You're understating it.
Yeah.
Somehow.
This year, he put up a 42 WRC plus. Last year, 40. 2020 in the shortened season, 45. 2019, 49. This guy's a sub 50 WRC plus player every year. He's like the modern day Jeff Mathis, but maybe worse at the plate. But I mean, as a guy who is going to go to, the Pirates, I mean, they need somebody to help handle their young pitching staff, and I mean, might as well. I don't know. I mean, he'll be a good leader and be able to handle their pitching staff, which is good. So, but other than that, like, I mean, it doesn't really make any difference.
Not much to say. But all right, we're going to move on to David's portion of this episode. The big move the Cubs made, and that is signing Brad Boxberger to a 1-year, $2.8 million deal.
Yep, he's the one.
He's the one.
Yep. I told Damien that I've only ever seen the Cubs destroy Boxberger, so my hope is that they tell him to not do whatever it is that the Cubs have on him. Because he's got like a 6-something ERA against the Cubs and like a 2.7 against everybody else. It's rather wild. I know the Cubs hit like back-to-back walk-off home runs against him when he was in Arizona. They have destroyed him. They have owned him. So hopefully he's going to, not start doing that for other teams, but it's a perfectly fine middle reliever signing. And what we saw from the middle relievers the Cubs signed last year was improvement across the board from their year before. So hopefully Boxberger can kind of take that step forward that Robertson, Givens, and Martin did. Yeah,
I was going to say real quick on Boxberger, this is a guy that the Cubs might have destroyed him, but not everyone else has destroyed him. And he put up a sub-3 ERA this year. His metrics weren't quite that good, but he's consistently outperformed his metrics in his career. He's got a 3.44 career ERA and a 3.98 career FIP. So I don't think that's something that's totally out of the ordinary for him. And, I mean, like you said, David Robertson did the same thing last year. I think Boxberger could go in there for the amount of money they're getting paid for relievers with very similar numbers to him, for him to get, 1 year, $2.8 million. That is not bad. So I think the Cubs made a good move there.
Yeah, and his heat map is frightening for his fastball. It's all right down the middle, and he somehow gets whiffs with it. So I don't know what he's got there, but hopefully he brings it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing that he's going to have a very high-level middle infield defense behind him. And that's because the other move is the Cubs did sign shortstop Dansby Swanson to a 7-year, $177 million deal.
Yep, second highest deal in team history behind the Jason Hayward deal. Not the best example.
Very similar deal.
I mean, it's really not, but here's why.
This banter is going to be great.
Here's the middle infield defense at this point in Major League Baseball it's unknown how valuable it's going to be at this point. I certainly don't mind going all in on it. Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner up the middle is going to be one of the most athletic middle infields in baseball. It's going to feature two guys who are extremely good in their respective positions and, favorites for the Gold Glove next year. And the Cubs pitching rotation is ground ball heavy with Marcus Stroman, Kyle Hendricks, Jamison Taillon. It works for the roster right here. And you'll note we've only been talking about Dansby Swanson's defense because his offense is a little suspect. It's not the same tier as Carlos Correa. It's not the same tier as Bogarts, Turner, but he did hit more home runs than all of those guys last year. So my thought here is that, the Cubs need power and they need defense. If they can get a 25 home run season out of Dansby Swanson, I don't know that they really care whether or not it's with a high on base percentage. He's got like a 4.5 wins above replacement expected from Zips right now, which is a huge gain for the Cubs. Desperately needed over whoever the second baseman was going to be, like Nick Madrigal or Zach McKinstry, or a combination of those two. Like, this is just a big step up.
Yeah, I'll start by saying it is an upgrade for the Cubs for sure. I've been watching Dansby Swanson for a long time. I don't know if I've ever told y'all this, but I was at Dansby Swanson's first career major league game. I went up there to Turner Field. It was last year at Turner Field. I went up there for his debut game. So that was a lot of fun. He got his first hit. They were playing the Twins. But anyways, he's been a good player for a while. The thing is with Dansby Swanson, he's a frustrating player to watch because when he's at the plate, because he has the power in him to hit some home runs. He hits the ball really, really hard, but he has a frustrating approach at the plate. He strikes out a ton. He doesn't walk very much, and he's very BABIP heavy. This year his career best offensive season was fueled by a BABIP 50 points above his career average. He is going to hit some home runs. He hit 27 in 2021. He hit 25 this year. But he's probably more of a league average type hitter. Last year he was a 99 WRC plus. I think that's probably where he's going to mainly be, but he is so inconsistent. He's going to have some years where he's more like a 90, and he's going to have some years where he's probably a 110 to 115. The thing about his defense, I really like his defense. He was elite in 2022. I think he's more of really good as opposed to elite. This was by far his best defensive season, and I think a lot of it has to do with just kind of the funkiness of defensive metrics. But he's a very good defensive shortstop. I think that Dansby Swanson is more of a 2 to 3 win role player than he is a superstar. And I know the Cubs wanted to spend a lot of money this offseason, and obviously he improves their team. I don't think this is the type of like game-changing type player that you've got on with Dansby Swanson. That and I was very glad the Braves didn't give him $25 million plus to bring him back. I think that especially over 7 years. But I mean, he's going to help the Cubs. He's going to make them better. He's definitely an upgrade over Nick Madrigal. So who obviously he's technically replacing Nick Madrigal because Horner's going to shift back over to second. But I think I think out of the big four shortstops, I would have taken the other 3 guys pretty easily. Well, depending on Correa's injury, actually, depending on what that ends up being. But I think he's by far the lower of the 4, and I'm not super confident I think this contract, there's a chance that this ends up being a decent contract. I think there's a pretty good chance it ends up being like Jason Hayward, and I know you don't want to hear that, David,
I mean,
it's a very similar career path to Jason Hayward.
But Hayward was a power, like they were trying to get power out of Hayward when he was not doing that. Right, that was the mistake the Cubs made in 2016. Was Jason Hayward used to hit for power? Let's try to get him back to that. If the Cubs go, "Whoa, Dansby Swanson strikes out too much," let's try to get him back to what he used to be when he was making 22% strikeout rates and a 63 WRC plus in 2017. Like that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
I think they need to let him swing freely, let him hit for power. Statcast had him for 33 home runs in Wrigley Field last year. So if he could get to 30 home runs, that's huge.
Yeah. Last point for me, I think he's very, very similar. He's going to end up in a similar fashion to what Trevor Story did. I think he's going to end up being very similar to Trevor Story. So
I don't know about that either, but because he's much more athletic. But anyway. We move.
And you just did. We will, but Matt made one little thing. We had a little thing that came out about the Correa thing. It's supposedly an eye
No,
issue.
it's not. It's not. That's a joke. That was a joke. Oh, sorry.
I thought it was.
Nope.
I thought it was a real thing.
No.
All right. Well,
nope.
Delete what I just said. I'm going to delete that out. Nobody's going to actually hear that part.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be funny. Anyway, so let's transition over to the Baltimore Orioles, I guess. And that's where they signed Adam Frazier to a 1-year, $8 million deal and Michael Givens to a 1-year, $5 million deal.
Yeah, I could start with Adam Frazier. This is a kind of interesting deal. I think that their infield is kind of set, but he's a guy who can rotate around a lot. So, good contact hitter, honestly, a good guy to bring off the bench. Um, he plays the defense at a pretty nice level. I mean, in 2021 he put up a good offensive season. In 2022, not so good. A lot of that was BABIP fueled. He probably really is somewhere in between. I would expect him to be about a league average hitter, a little bit above league average defensively, maybe more league average base runner. He's really just an average player. He's exactly a league average player to me. And I think that adding that depth is going to be really nice for Baltimore, especially with the fact that they've got so many young players. If one of those young players comes up and struggles, you don't feel too bad about having to throw Adam Frazier out there if they need to go to AAA for a few weeks or need to rest them a little bit or something. I think that would be I think it's a good player to kind of just have on your team to be able to be a utility guy, move around a little bit. So I think this was a pretty nice signing. $8 million isn't too bad for a guy with his skill set. So I think that was totally fine.
Yeah, and it will shift around their middle infield is maybe the one issue is that, where's Jorge Mateo going to play if Gunnar Henderson does go to shortstop and your Ramon Urias plays third base? You're not DHing Frazier or Mateo.
I was going to say, couldn't Urias play second some?
Wouldn't Frazier be playing second?
Well, I mean, if Henderson doesn't play short, Frazier can play short. But that's what I'm saying about Frazier can rotate around some. Is what I'm saying. Like,
Mateo was an elite defensive shortstop,
right? I mean, so you have Mateo, Henderson at third, and Urias at short, and then Frazier can kind of rotate around, platoon a little bit, give me that utility guy. That's kind of what I was thinking.
We'll see. It's a little confusing, but I mean, I like bringing in veterans who can anchor the top of your lineup. Michael Givens is a good player, came from the Cubs last year, went over to the Mets at the trade deadline. It was actually bad for the Mets, but he was really good with the Cubs. And I think the Orioles, bringing a guy back in with that familiarity, maybe he can be their closer since they traded away Jorge Lopez last year. Givens has that kind of pedigree, so he's a good guy to watch. Got a weird arm slot that allows him to have some success. So $5 million for relievers. We've seen the reliever market kind of go way more than that. So Givens up for $5 million. I would have thought the Orioles were going to spend a little more this offseason and try to supplant Adley, Gunnar, and all those guys there. Just Frazier and Givens is a little disappointing, and Kyle Gibson, I guess. But yeah, kind of a disappointing offseason from the Orioles.
And it's not over yet. They could make a trade too or something. So
they're just saving up for the bidding war next year. Let me tell you,
they will get somebody next year.
Let's go ahead and transition over to the Chicago White Sox. They signed Andrew Benintendi to a 5-year, $75 million deal, which actually is their highest deal in team history.
Yeah,
I bet Mike doesn't like this one, and I love it. I bet that's what happens here.
I mean, I don't hate it. I mean, I think Andrew Benintendi's a pretty good player. I don't know if I would have given him 5 years, but he's only 28, which is something that's different with him. A lot of these other guys have been like, 30, 31, especially guys with his skill set. He's only 28, so there's a chance you could find some things with him. He hit for a lot of contact this year. 122 WRC plus was really nice. He did have a high batting average on balls in play. Defensively, he's all right. He's left fielder. He's an okay left fielder. I think he's maybe a little bit above league average player. He's a decent regular, and I mean, I don't know if I would have given him 5 years, but $15 million a year for a guy who maybe you can tap a little bit of power there. Still, I think it's fine. I mean, I'm not super enthusiastic about it or anything, but it's fine. So.
Here's the kicker for this deal is that the White Sox corner outfield defense last year was Eloy Jimenez and Andrew Vaughn. So that's a huge upgrade. They have not had proper corner outfield players in years. It's been so long. We've seen them take on like Nomar Mazara and Adam Eaton, and they have just been struggling to find somebody who can step into the corner outfield, play it every day for, solid success, and then, at the top of their lineup, he's gonna hit leadoff. He's gonna get on base. He's been doing that for his whole career. I like Benintendi a lot, and $75 million for a 28-year-old with, we know he's got more power upside in him, but if he could just repeat what he did last year, I mean, 373 on base percentage, that's a leadoff hitter in this day and age every day. He's got some athleticism, and with the stolen base, the pitch clock and the pickoff limitations, I think he'll steal some bases too. It's just, this is such a perfect move for the White Sox specifically because they've been struggling so much with that corner outfield position. Now Eloy can play, DH. You don't, that's a big increase in that outfield defense, so it helps the pitching staff. This move is a roster wide plus for the White Sox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't think it's a terrible deal overall. I mean, it's like David said, it's a lot of what the White Sox were missing out in the outfield, and it's a veteran hitter that's going to be pretty solid. You can almost write down what he's going to give you at the plate each year. I mean, he's going to be an above average league hitter. He's going to hit right around the 260 to 270 mark on average. And if you can tap back into that power a little bit, I mean, I think it's a just fine overall deal. But let's go ahead. We'll stay in division there and go to a guy who we're saying if he can tap into the power a little bit more. This guy doesn't need to tap into the power. He maybe needs to tap into the contact a little bit more.
Yeah.
And that's with Joey Gallo signing a 1-year, $11 million deal with the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, Joey Gallo's a guy that I've never really been a huge fan of his game. I know he's had some years where he was not bad, but I mean, it's hard to run a 40% strike. I don't care how much power you have. If you run a 40% strikeout rate over a season, it's going to be hard to be a really good player unless you are like have the offensive game of Joey Gallo and be like an elite defensive catcher or something. I mean, he had a 91 WRC plus last year. That's a partial season. He had an 85 WRC plus last year. I mean, this is a guy that, he's really lost at the plate, and he strikes out 40% of the time. I know the shift being gone will help him a little bit, but it's not like he's put too many balls in play that aren't home runs or anyway. So, when he makes contact, it's a home run typically. So it's like, I don't know. I'm not, but for the cheap, for $11 million, I don't know if I'd give him $11 million. I know the Twins really had money to spend, and maybe they can turn him around a little bit, but I don't know. I'm not super high on this one. So
Joey Gallo.
Hey, just saying, JD Martinez for $10 million looks a lot better.
It really does. I agree with that 100%.
Joey Gallo's baseball savant page looks hilarious with the 94th percentile hard hit and first percentile expected batting average.
Yeah,
this is a Miguel Sano replacement. They already had a guy who strikes out a ton and hits for power. I think it's a bit of an upgrade. Maybe a little too much money, but whatever. Gallo's more athletic and play the field better. It's fine. The Twins are, they didn't get any of the shortstops, so they've definitely, going to have to get creative with it. And, getting a Joey Gallo bounce back would be certainly a creative way to have some success next year.
Well, they haven't got any of the shortstops yet.
That's right. Elvis Andrus, future Minnesota Twin.
Yes. Well, let's go ahead and we'll go over to the other big signing. I know we're already pretty deep into this episode, but we had another big signing that happened, and that was that the Yankees signed Carlos Rodon to a 6-year, $162 million deal.
Yeah, Carlos Rodon is a very, very, very good pitcher when he's healthy. The issue has been over his career staying healthy. He got better in 2021 after betting on himself. I think he was non-tendered, and he went back to the White Sox and took a 1-year deal there and was unbelievably good, but dealt with injuries a little bit. 2022, he stayed healthy. I think he stayed fully healthy. He pitched 180 innings, which was career high, or 178 innings, career high. It was an unbelievable 6.2 wins above replacement, a 2.88 ERA on the season, a 2.25 FIP, tons of strikeouts. He has pretty good control, not elite control, but good control. Not a ton of walks. Doesn't give up many home runs. This guy is elite when he's healthy. He's going to be a Yankee now, and I think the Yankees giving him 6 years. I think this contract will be a steal if he stays healthy. But that's really the question with him, is how much he's going to be able to pitch. Is he going to, pitch, 15 starts and then get hurt again? But if he ages well and he stays healthy, he's only 30. He'll be 35 when this contract runs, or this will be his age 30 season. He'll be 35 when his contract is up. Not super old for a pitcher. So I don't think they're risking anything super long term. It's just if he stays healthy. And if he stays healthy, this contract could look really, really good. I think this is a great move for the Yankees.
John Lester got 6 years, 155 in 2015 to go to the Cubs. And at that point, John Lester had won a World Series and was an extremely reliable left-handed pitcher. This deal, 6 for 162. I was dreading that, in their haste to acquire an ace, the Cubs would give out a John Lester deal to Carlos Rodon. He just doesn't feel like the type of guy that can push a team over the top. That said, the Yankees are already a very talented team, and him being able to slot in with Garrett Cole to complement, righty lefty, complement that arsenal with these high velocity guys makes them a very formidable team. It's a great deal for the Yankees. I question the potential longevity of this deal just because of Carlos Rodon's track record. But as you said, if he stays healthy, this is a good deal. But look at what guys got last year, right? I mean, Kevin Gossman, Robbie Ray, those guys even had longer track records than Rodon with similar upside and got way less money.
Yeah,
so
there is no way possible Robbie Ray had a better track record long term than Rodon is. He had one good season.
He could at least pitch well, like every year, though, is the thing, right? Like,
I mean, I get that part. That's what I'm saying. I mean, the last 2 years of Rodon has been literally like elite of the elite. So he's been the best pitcher, or I won't say the best. He's been one of the best pitchers, like top 10 easily best pitchers in baseball for the last 2 years. Not really that close when he's been healthy. And this past year he pitched a healthy season, so maybe it's behind him. But I do agree that there's a lot of injury risk here. One other thing to note too, the Yankees are one of those teams that the payroll doesn't really matter that much to them. So you can eat a contract like this if it's bad, if it doesn't work. But
and a thing, he took significantly less money to go to New York.
Yeah.
That was out there, that he had other deals that were bigger from other places, and he took less money from the Yankees.
I wonder, that's been said an awful lot this year. I wonder if some of that, I'm sure that there might have been some times people have been given, a bigger offer somewhere else. They said I wonder how much that's actually happening, or if that's just kind of like trying to hype up their fan base and stuff. Cause that seems like that's been said about every free agent this year, just about. But
I think free agents are being more picky this year.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I think I think people are starting to see that they want to go where they want to go, and they want to be competitive on where they go now. But it's not a safe deal for the Yankees. It comes down to both of you guys have a case to being right. David, if Rodon's shoulder issues creep back up, looks like a terrible deal in 2 years, 3 years.
I didn't even say it was a terrible deal, but
no, I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm saying it would look like a terrible deal in 2 or 3 years if his shoulder injuries crop back up, right? Matt, if he stays healthy and he does what he does, it's a great deal because he fits right in with that. That's the one thing that the whole question around Rodon. Is he going to give you the production, or is he going to be injured like he's shown to be for most of his career outside of the last 2 years? Which Rodon you're going to get, who knows? But slotting in right behind Garrett Cole in that rotation, then you're able to put, you still have Nestor there. You're going to have Luis Severino. I think this team, the pitching wise, I think it looks great.
Frankie Montas.
It's just fine. Yeah, you and Domingo Germán.
Wow.
You have 6 good starters there.
I'm going to say something that I think is y'all probably push back on, but if he's healthy, Rodon's better than Garrett Cole. If he's healthy.
That's
All right. So the offense for the Yankees is the big question here. They haven't done anything to improve.
Y'all are gonna hate that, but
we're just not.
I don't hate it. I think it's fine. It's just let's see how Rodon pitches in Yankee Stadium when he has to give up 2 home runs every game.
Let's see. Yeah, going to the New York media is going to be a whole different ballgame in that stadium. But the real thing is with that offense. They re-signed Aaron Judge, but they haven't done anything else. That's where their real question mark is. They need to make a big trade somewhere. There's
the offense stinks.
The offense does stink, and the marketplace, free agency wise, doesn't give you many more options. You can go get Conforto, but there's still questions around him. So Yankees still have a lot of work to do, but we'll go ahead and move on. We'll stay in division to the Yankees' biggest rivals, the Boston Red Sox. Them and the Dodgers did a trade. The Dodgers acquired JD Martinez. The Boston Red Sox acquired Justin Turner for a 2-year, $22 million deal. It does sound like Turner's going to play some first base and DH most of the time for them, and that's because they also designated Eric Hosmer for assignment.
Yeah, I think, a 2-year deal for Justin Turner is fine. They're not paying him a ton, $11 million a year at AAV, which is fine. He's not quite as good as he was, but he's still good. He's going to give you 130 to 140 games maybe, and part of that's going to be DHing, part of that might be first base. He's going to hit pretty well. I bet he puts up a 110 to 120 WRC plus as he ages a little bit more. He's still a really solid hitter, and he'll be fine there. Put up 2 WAR. He's gonna be fine there.
Justin Turner had a 154 WRC or 152 WRC plus in the second half last year. Yeah. He's just been so consistently good for so long in LA. It's hard to picture him anywhere else at this point. And
really
I know that's painful for Damian, but Turner's very much a DH at this point, was not playing particularly well at third base last year. He did slot in 60 games, but he was rated negatively there. So I envision him as a DH for them. Maybe he will play some first base. I'm very nervous about Eric Hosmer, though, because my team's currently looking for a first baseman, and that is the last one I want right there. I mean, my goodness.
It is funny that the Red Sox cut him when they weren't even paying a penny of his salary, yep. which is very hilarious. Yep. I wonder if that transitions over, or the Red Sox are just banking that money. I'm not quite sure. But as far as Justin Turner, it hurts. It really hurts as a Dodger fan. I mean, he's a guy who came in here on a minor league deal from the Mets 9 years ago, 10 years, whatever it is, and really became the star that he is now. He is I think he's the Dodgers franchise leader in a bunch of postseason categories. He's a guy who was from LA. I think he went to Fullerton, Cal State Fullerton. He shouldn't have ever had the opportunity to leave the Dodgers. They shouldn't have, taken that option to get out of his contract this year. I mean, ideally, even then, you're looking at the contract. They gave Martinez 10 years. Justin Turner got 11 years. I mean, 10 years, sorry, 10 million, and Turner got 11 million. I mean, if you're talking about overall, if you offer Turner 10 million to come back, I believe he absolutely takes that. I mean, they did his option for $4 million, so he's really getting 15 this year is what it comes down to. But, he's a really productive player still. He's a guy who usually starts slow. The power doesn't really kick on until usually May or June. And then he usually ends the season right in that postseason is where you want to get hot. And he's a player that usually does that. He'll carry a team through months of a season. Doing that. The defense is questionable. Doesn't seem like he's going to have to play much third base with Rafi Devers there now. I am interested to see how he transitions over to first base if he has to do that. But it's a good designated hitter. He does have a player option for the second year, so he could opt out there. But we'll see overall. He's now reunited with like half his Dodger teammates now with Kenley Jansen and Kike Hernandez and Alex Verdugo and whoever else.
Not Cody Bellinger though. How mad can you make Damian in one
episode? Oh my goodness, this is terrible.
The Astros re-signed Michael Brantley.
Yeah. I'm all flabbergasted over here, but yeah, the Astros did re-sign Michael Brantley to a 1-year, $12 million deal.
Oh man, yeah. I like Michael Brantley.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought Michael Brantley was a guy that I kind of wanted on the I kind of wanted the Braves to potentially make a move with him, kind of add some good contact in the lineup and his DH type. But I mean, I'm not surprised he's going back to Houston. He's a really good player, makes a lot of contact, dealt with some injuries in 2022, but he was really good when he played. 127 WRC plus, the contact rates were still elite. He actually was putting up the best walk rate of his career before his injury. It's only 277 plate appearances, but still, he's a very, very, very good player. Good contact, left-handed bat. Still hits a lot of doubles. Not a huge home run guy anymore, but or ever, but he's a good player, and he's the Houston's gonna have him again. They should be glad that they got him back.
That is insane to me that he has not put up a WRC plus below 120 since 2017. That's absurd, man. He's been really good for a really long time. This is just another Houston move. He'll split time at DH with Jordan and Jose Abreu, and that lineup just keeps getting deeper. Going to be tough to pick against Houston once we have to do preseason picks.
Yep.
And dumb old Damien will still pick the Angels for some reason.
They've had a good offseason. We have news on them, but we'll wait for next week.
Listen, I fall into that trap every year. All right, we're not doing it. But let's go on to the Steve Cohen portion of the episode, since we seem to have one of those every single week. But the Mets re-signed Adam Ottavino to a 2-year, $14.5 million deal. That's not even the big part of it. It's now that their luxury tax number has, with all the taxes and stuff, it's upwards of $440 million for this roster.
Good grief.
Yeah, I'll start just quickly. Adam Ottavino was really good in 2022. He kind of was back to the form he showed when he was with Colorado in 2018 and New York with the Yankees in 2019. That deal, he is 37 years old, so there's a little bit of risk to it, but I don't think that's a bad contract at all. Money wise, it's actually a pretty good value, I feel like, for a guy who's been as good as him for a pretty good track record. But I'll tell you, the Mets, with that, you would think that they would be a better team with that payroll. Not that they're not a good team, they are a good team, but you would think that they'd be like a runaway World Series favorites if they were spending $450 million on their roster. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And they're not even the clear favorite to win their division, right?
There's like 3 teams that could be.
Yeah,
they're not even.
The Mets have mostly re-signed guys too. A lot of that money is to players that were already on the roster or to directly replace a player they lost.
Yeah, and I think they're worse. I think they downgraded it's hard to say worse. I think they downgraded from talent-wise from DeGrom to Verlander.
Yeah, but that one's still, we don't know how that one's going to play out. What if DeGrom gets hurt in game 1 next year?
Right. I'm not saying that the contracts are going to lie. I'm just saying, in talent-wise, like how good they can be, I think they downgraded. I think Verlander's still really good. I think that DeGrom's better. But DeGrom could get hurt. Verlander could get hurt. He's 41 years old, and he's had Tommy John pretty recently. It's not,
It was pretty interesting because during the press conference today, which I think today was the Justin Verlander conference. Yesterday was Kodai Senga's. But Epler did say that they expect to make some move at catcher, which there's been a reported move of Omar Narvaez. I don't even know if we put that on here.
I don't think we did.
We didn't. They will hit on it in the next episode. But there's a potential trade of James McCann has been really big recently out there. I don't know who that's going to be or whatever, but there is some way with that payroll and that tax could take a hit with our hit, go lower by trading away some of these other people.
I was going to say with that, if James McCann trade, they'd just eat the money probably.
Maybe some of it, but
they might be able to get,
or package a prospect in a.
If they package they could. If they package a prospect with them, then they could maybe get rid of some money. But I don't know if they're even. If you're going to pay that much money anyways, what's the point?
Of course, I was expecting them to do that when they needed, another bat at the trade deadline, and then refused to trade for Wilson Contreras, because even then it was like, well, you just put that whatever McCann on whatever prospect the Cubs want, and there you go. So
yeah,
I don't know what they're doing.
PCA again.
That's what they're worried about.
Yeah. But, the last piece of news we had, we'll stay in division here in the NL East. It's that the Philadelphia Phillies signed Vice President and GM Sam Fuld and Assistant General Managers Ned Rice and Jorge Valdina to extensions through the 2025 season. So all the top getters there, I think Dabrowski already got his extension. Sam Fuld and the 2 assistant GMs now after that World Series run have all signed extensions, and I believe they're all through 2025.
Sign players. That's how you get extended as a GM, turns out. Because they
trade everybody,
sign all the players, acquire a bunch of MVP candidates. It's funny too, because these contract extensions are quite literally a third of the deal for Trey Turner. Bryce Harper will still have 6 years left on his deal. Signing these players to long-term deals is almost irrelevant for these GMs, because what if the Phillies just tank, and Sam Fuld and all these other people who've been extended, they'll all be gone, but the players will still be there. So, it's ultimately very irrelevant. But when you have that kind of success with signing players as they've done, and it is deserved, the years can't be a factor here. You have to go out, be aggressive, sign the deal that people don't expect. That's how Trey Turner got to the Phillies. That's how Bryce Harper got to the Phillies. And you look at the roster they've constructed mostly out of free agents, and it's very, very good.
Yeah, I mean, when you sign all those guys, you're signing them for like 10 or 12-year deals, and you're probably not going to be there anyways when they're over. So, you might as well.
Pretty much.
Exactly.
But that's the last little bit we had on this episode. As we head into the holidays, I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I think we're planning on the next episode being after the New Year, if I'm not mistaken. There?
Yes.
On the 3rd? Okay.
Yep.
So the 3rd is when we're planning on coming back. All the big name free agents, well, considering Correa's deal gets official, are signed. So no emergency episodes, hopefully. But, anything else you guys want to wrap up on before we hit the holiday break?
I don't think anything for me. I mean, I think, I think everything's moved a lot quicker than I thought this offseason. And I think that, we'll see. The Correa thing is going to be really interesting to see what happens there. But, going into the, couple weeks here, I don't expect to see a ton, but that means we'll probably have like 10 trades. So, but hope everyone out there has a happy, have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And I guess we won't be back before New Year's. So 2023 will be our next episode unless something crazy happens. So
I can't wait.
David, you got anything?
I can't wait for baseball. Now we're in the point where I'm like, all right, it's time for opening day. The big names have signed. Let's go. Let's roll.
Oh, baseball is 100 days from happening as of today. So, all right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. And from us to you, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2023.